hello. I won't belabor you with the same kind of introduction because we're both almost identical checkboxes and everything. We're here to talk about Apache Maven 4. Before we start, Apache Maven 4 is not yet out. So I'd like to resolve that first. It's still in alpha stage, so we set the stage with that.
Perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about Maven, then we're going to go into the differences between Maven 3 and 4. So let's start. Who here is using Maven? Maybe should do the opposite. Who is not using Maven?
Good. There's a good crowd. I wish there were more of us. There are dozens of us out there.
All right, so just a couple of things. So Maven is developed in Java, right? So as you know, it's a build management tool, powerful one. It's primarily used for Java projects, but it does support other languages as well. It's open source, so there's something you don't like, something you want to contribute, we can just go there, send a PR, try to be part of the project, try to contribute back to the community, and follows convention over configuration. What is that?
Oh, that's a great question, Rodrigo. Convention over configuration is a software paradigm. It obviously reduces the number of decisions you make because some sensible defaults are provided to you. It provides what is called a principle of least astonishment, in that you are never surprised by what you get. You know and expect what is available to you when you don't set it yourself, when you don't override it yourself. And that's what Maven does for you. These are sensible default assumptions Maven makes on your behalf. And just an example over here is the directory structure that is commonly found in every single Maven project. There's a source directory, there's a test directory, and there's a main in there. You know exactly how the setup looks like anytime you visit a Maven project. Can this be changed? Yes. But typically, most people follow these conventions, which makes it very easy for another developer to come in and experience the same behavior. So it improves developer experience. Now, a lot is missing with other tools, such as Make or And, where they do not have these kinds of conventions, and Maven supports them, which is why Maven is, in my humble opinion, or in our humble opinion, if I may, a superior tool in many cases. And Maven is not just a build tool, it's a build management tool. We'll try to cover some of that, but I'll let Rodrigo take that over.
Perfect. All right. So what is a POM? Is a Pomeranian?
Why don't we ask the audience what is a POM? What is a POM? Can anyone tell us what is a POM? Project something, okay.
Project something, good. Good start.
That's one of the three words, which is good.
All right, 1 out of 3.
Object or oriented, one of those two, okay. And the third one was model. Great, awesome answers. So, yes, for those of you who said project, object, model, awesome.
Thank you. All right. So, a POM, right? It lists the dependencies, properties of our project, profiles, details, plugins, so everything that when we work with Maven, it's going to be part of the POM, the project-oriented model. All right, so here's a POM. I'm sure all of you have seen this before. I don't know if you can read properly, but this is a POM file, so there are many sections here you're familiar with. Project descriptions, so the group, the artifact, the version. There are a lot of things, properties, modules, all of the dependencies are here. Depends management, plugins, profiles, what else?
So Maven, in effect, is a build management tool that provides for both the build instructions as well as dependency or consumer instructions. So you have build instructions in how you build your project, and then a portion of that has to get carried forward to where it is stored in a central repository of sorts, which we'll cover in a bit, but it also needs some identifier information, and that is all contained in a single POM when you create one. So I'm going to quickly run through the benefits of Apache Maven. I don't want to belabor this. We are all here. We all like Maven. Otherwise, we would not be here. So, I mean, there are a few benefits. You got visibility in your projects. You get reusability into your projects. Verifiability. You can verify your projects by building them again and again. Reproducibility. Whatever you build once, you can always reproduce with the same dependencies as long as you're disciplined about how you set up your dependencies. So it requires some amount of discipline. It requires build mastery, for lack of a better word, but it works amazingly well to reproduce. There's maintainability that you get from Maven because it's very consistent in the format that you look at. Management of builds becomes very simple, and it's very comprehensible because any project you take and that uses Maven looks very similar. The build structure looks very common. If you take any other build tool, for example, they have scripting and coding capabilities which make them somewhat different in every single project you have. Maven does not have that problem. At the same time, Maven is customizable. So if you want some custom behavior from Maven, you can write your own plugins, you can write your own mojos. It doesn't stop you from doing that, but your SDLC process for the builds always remains consistent. So that's something important and useful to know. So we're going to talk about how Apache Maven works, and we're going to do this interactively if you don't mind.
Sure, let's go.
Awesome. So you start asking me questions and I can try and answer them. Most of you in the room probably know this, so it's going to be a quick refresher. We're not going to spend too much time on this, right? So we have, what is this in between, Rodrigo? This is like a simple Java project that we have of some sort. Yep. And the red box you see on the corner is just going to have notes. You don't have to read through them right now. They're available in case you don't follow along or you want to read later on. So we have both approaches where I'll be verbally stating stuff, and it's also visible on the notes on the side. All right, great. So your Maven POM is something you put into your project, and it has a few things. You have some assembly instructions, you have some dependency instructions, plugins, and optional profiles. It is generally not recommended to use profiles. Avoid profiles if you can, but if you do have profiles, they will show up here, and we'll talk about profiles in a bit. And then you have lifecycle build phases that we'll cover. So what does Maven do to execute your project? So what do you think happens next, Rodrigo?
All right, so I think Maven's going to operate onto the POM. We're going to run through different stages so we can create a final version of the
final artifact. So the Maven POM structure itself is read by the Maven executable, and it can be used either on the terminal or in an IDE, different places. It searches for the project root, and it does something to the project at this point. What it does is it assembles what is known as an effective POM. An effective POM is something that we already covered, but just to reiterate, it builds out a complete POM, including what you have, plus the sensible defaults sort of superimposed on them. So it builds what is completely available for Maven to execute, and that's an effective POM. All the dependencies in your project are listed. Everything that you've declared is sort of assembled and put together into an effective POM. Effective POMs are read-only. You cannot change them. And then you have your repositories, which we covered earlier. Your repository is basically something that sits either on the internet or you can have a local cached copy of it. And several of you, hopefully all of you, have at some point in time looked into your .m2 directory under your user home. Anyone hasn't? You have not? Awesome. I was just pulling it like, but yeah, there is an M2 directory, and the .m2 directory is where all your cached builds or the builds of the dependencies that you use are downloaded to. It exists on your local, and you can always refresh it at any point using a Maven command. You also have a copy on the internet, and it's called your Internet Maven repository, and they're both available to service your build needs.
Good. What else?
So we got those, and then you got your third build process, which is for Maven to execute, where it goes through your dependencies and plugins, pulls them out from the local repository or from the internet, and does a build on your system. While it does the build on your system, it can also read through your profile and executes whatever lifecycle commands you pass to it. Right? Your lifecycle commands could be something as simple as clean install, clean verify, etc. It's something you pass to your Maven commands, and they get executed. And repositories are used to pull information as well as optionally push your artifacts back towards. So you can push your artifacts back into some repository, either local or remote. That's typically the working procedure for Apache Maven. So the final architecture diagram looks like this. It's just like you got all the steps involved here. So now, what is an effective POM?
Before we go there, you mentioned before that we write the POM, we write all those things, and where do we write those?
Okay.
Is that a common file? Is that a file that we need? Can I rename the file? Where do I write all those things?
So all these things are written in a pom.xml file, and this pom.xml file typically resides on the root of your project. Can you rename it to something else? Yes, you can. You can have a different name for a POM, and you can pass it with a command line argument of a -b in the file name.
So there comes the conventional over configuration?
There it is.
All right. Cool. All right, so the effective POM is going to be the final version. So after we run through all the stages on Maven, we're going to have the effective POM. So that's going to be our final
build-worthy.
I like the word. All right. So the content that Maven can execute for the project is going to have all the dependencies and plugins that's going to be used for the build. It's ready for execution. So again, is the last step that's going to, the artifact that's going to be generated. That's what Maven is going to operate on. So, all right. and how is the effective POM created, right? So we're gonna run through all those stages, okay? And some of them, as you can see, you can change. Some you might change. Some of them you should never touch it, okay? So we're gonna run in the steps. So each lower block overrides previous value. So Maven internal defaults, you should not change it.
They're in the jar file.
Right? You should not be touching it. The default POM in a Maven jar, right? You must not override.
Ideally,
right?
don't do that. It's not a good idea.
Right? So they have the settings under the Maven installation. So those are the Maven global settings. Can you change those?
Typically, they're not changed, except if you're in a corporate environment, maybe your system administrator or your repository administrator may advise you to make a change. Ideally, you should not be touching that file, because what you touch there affects every single project you use. So avoid changing the global settings if you can.
Perfect. So Maven user settings. So this is where the M2 directory is located. So this you might need to change, right? You might need to point to a different place or change something around there. You might change.
And then, of course, to change your own code, you could change your parent POM, bill of materials POM, which we will cover eventually, but just wanted to let you know. And then your actual Maven project POM.
Yeah. So.
And then when you superimpose all these layers together, you get what is called your effective POM, which is read-only, but contains all superimposed values that you've not yet overridden or set in your own POM. So that's how it compresses it to a single build-worthy, for lack of a better word, POM. A POM being a project object model, as we already stated before. So I'm going to quickly touch upon POM hierarchies because we just mentioned bill of materials and parent. So let's just very quickly see what these things are. And most of you in the room are probably aware, but I'm just setting the ground for folk who may not be aware. So you got three different kinds of, I guess, hierarchies that we can explain. One is a hierarchy through parentage, so where you have a parent POM, in that there is a POM and it has child POMs, and the child POMs inherit certain values, such as dependencies, plugins, properties, etc., from a parent POM. The child POM itself can be a parent to some other POM. So there is a hierarchy that continues. So you can have several layers of parentage. The second model of hierarchies is an aggregation-based model. In an aggregation or a reactor model, all child modules are set up to be executed. Right? The sequence of execution is determined by Maven. You are allowed to sort of list them in a certain order, which is taken as a suggestion by Maven. Do not rely on the module listing in your POM XML file. Maven may execute them out of that order. So be aware of that. Do not always assume that just because you listed your modules in a certain way, they all get executed the same way. That's a pain point a lot of developers face, because initially when you look at convention over configuration, you assume that you have set these in a specific style and they should execute in that, but Maven does not do that, right? So that's something to be aware of. An aggregate POM is where the parent knows of the children, but the children don't know the parent. So you're essentially just delegating all these builds to be built together in a certain order, and that's what aggregation does. And the third model is a bill of materials POM. A bill of materials is more recent, more modern version of hierarchies, where the child modules know of the parent, but the parent does not know the child modules. An example could be a Spring Boot POM. You have a Spring Boot master, and that Spring Boot starter POM, or whatever you call it, has no idea of the children that use that POM. Like your projects use it, but Spring Boot has no awareness of its existence, of your project's existence. And that's a bill of materials POM. A bill of materials POM is amazing and useful in setting certain dependencies and dependency managed versions, values, etc., that are reused in your code. So if you have a set of dependencies that your project needs, you don't have to test with every single version of those. A known set of dependencies can be set together in a bill of materials POM, and you get to use it. It's an amazing feature. Try it out if you haven't. Okay, so simple examples of how they look. I don't want us to focus a lot on this because our topic is about Apache Maven 4. We're just setting the ground so we can cover why Apache Maven 4 is so much more awesome. All right, so you got a parentage where you have a parent declared, and that's how you declare a parent, where you have a group ID, artifact ID, and a version, and you declare that as a parent in your child POM. In an aggregation model, the parent knows of the children, therefore the children are listed in the parent POM. The child has no idea about the parent's existence, right? And in a bill of materials, it's the opposite way around, where a bill of materials is declared, it has no idea who's using it, and everyone can use it, as long as it's public and available, of course. Any questions about the 3 POM hierarchies that we just stated? Good? Yes, sir. Great question. So when do you use which one? So the question is, when do you use which of these hierarchies? Typically, parentage is used when you have a project structure where there are several modules being worked on by different development teams or different people, right? And then you have some shared values of dependencies. For example, you share the logging within that particular set of projects. You share, let us say, your JUnit APIs or whatever. That is when a parentage comes in very handy. An aggregation comes in handy when you're trying to set a few builds to work together. For example, you want to build several dependent projects together, but they're not an exhaustive list. Not all of them, but maybe like 5 of the 9 builds, you want to do them together, you would use an aggregation model. A bill of materials is amazing when you want to set dependencies that need to be used across several projects which are not interrelated. So I don't know if that answers your question.
In mix and match, maybe use a parent to pull up certain profiles and use BOM.
Right. The question is, can I mix and match between a parent, a bill of materials, and maybe an aggregator? And the answer is yes. So if you don't mind going back to the bottom of the slide, you'll notice that we are doing a mix and match here. It says the module can set the aggregator as a parent because the aggregator is the only one knows about the children. The children don't know, but a module can set the aggregator as a parent. It's possible. So whatever is in red here is the mix and matches that are possible. Does that answer your question? Awesome. All right, Rodrigo.
All right. So Maven.
Why don't you?
3. So current state of Maven 3. So let's go. Maven is an amazing tool. It's versatile, comprehensive, but there are some challenges with that. Right? So, for example, it's painful to maintain versions in multi-module projects. So the same way it's hard to handle the version of dependency in sibling modules. Or for example, I have a module and my father doesn't mean that the child is going to have the same version, so it's hard to manage it. There's no implicit way to separate build info from consumer info, and we're going to go into that later. Developers were lazy. We don't want to do work, so we use default versions for a plugin. So whatever is the version that is there, it's the one that's going to be taken. If, for example, if we don't want this version, we can overwrite, but maybe someone looking at the project right away is not going to know exactly which version is being used. I know by default.
And this is a common problem a lot of us developers have. When we first create our POM, we do not declare all our plugins, right? How many of you declare your compiler version, Maven compiler version? How many of you? Great. I can see a lot of us are not raising our hands. How many of us actually put in the Surefire version that we need? Almost all of us. You want to know why? It's not default available. So we do it. We are forced to do it. But there are default plugins that Maven provides, and we tend to forget setting them. The best practice, always set your POM versions. But how would you know? Maven 3 did not help you.
And creating a bill of materials, it's not easy using Maven 3. So there is no built-in support to propagate new versions to child modules. So you would have to hard code that or use some plugins. Like
How many of us have faced this problem where we have, I guess, a parentage structure and we have a version, and now we are trying to upgrade the child modules to a new version? And what do?
Hard code.
Hard code. Go replace every single one of them painfully.
Yes. So there are ways to get around that, but no, it's not easy. So you can add a plugin like CodeHouse. We have the Flatten Maven plugin.
How many of you have used Flatten Maven plugin? Okay, one. Okay, the Flatten Maven plugin, the first one that you see up there, CodeHouse. Okay, awesome. Two among all of us. 3, I've used it too. How many of you have heard of CI-friendly Flatten Maven plugin? Again, a very limited audience. Of course, Flatten Maven plugin has issues that Rodrigo is going to cover.
Yeah. So again, this plugin solves the issue with the profile, but requires including the third-party plugin. So there we are adding plugins to our build. It should have a better way to do that. Right? Yeah. And both plugins use a revision property to set version values. Right. Build info versus consumption info.
So I can definitely talk
Sure.
about it. We just covered it in a bit, but Maven is Maven provides two features, right? There is the build portion of Maven, which is where you declare the instruction set on how you want your code to be built. And the second part is the consumer information that is available on your repository when you're trying to download the coordinates, your group ID, artifact ID, version, the dependencies the POM has, etc., are all in the consumer POM. And our build instructions are meaningless in a consumer POM, right? Why does a consumer of our artifact need to know what our SCM repository is, our source control management repository is? Why do they need to know our issue management? Why do they need to know where we put our Jira tickets? I don't want to know where I put my Jira tickets. I hate Jira. Side conversation, and maybe for later. But yeah, so all this exists in the consumer POM, and it doesn't need to exist in the consumer POM. Why does a consumer POM need to know what my modules are, right? I define the modules in my aggregator. Do I need this information back in my consumer? I don't believe so, because it's of no value there. All this existed.
Perfect. So version of siblings modules in Apache Maven 3. So some multi-modules projects have sibling dependencies. And for this, require using the project version. I know everybody probably uses this.
There's a common pain point, I guess. A lot of us do a $project.version in our properties, and then we set it magically at one place and pray to all our Maven gods that it works.
Yeah.
Right? We've all done this. Let's admit it. There's no shame in this.
We're going IntelliJ replace all.
Yes.
And limited testing to the most recent version of all siblings, or we are hard coding versions during testings, and we should not be doing that.
So how many of us have done this, where you have one module that you want to fix and your version number increases, but everything else is the same? And the best cheat we have is to go hard code the remaining modules, because when we build, everything will get built, and it's painful.
Right. And Maven provides some default values of some plugins to use. In Maven 3, there's no way to identify if a default version is in use. So the best practice is to always set the version.
So Maven compiler plugin, set the value, please. Maven resources plugin, set the value, please. Set the version value, right? Physically define it in your POM. It is a very healthy practice, not just now, but in any time in the future. Whenever you're creating a new POM file, please do yourselves and future developers who are looking at your code a favor. Set the values of every single plugin you use.
Yeah, and don't forget to spend more time reading code than writing code, so you're making it easier for someone who's gonna look at the code later. Right, and finally, Maven, there is no bill of materials packaging.
I do have a question. How many here have created a bill of materials? Awesome, I see 2 hands. How did you create a bill of materials, if you don't mind me asking? It is just a POM file with a POM packaging, and it gets confusing because it's a POM which could mean something else in some other part of your code. It's not obvious that it's a bill of materials POM. Third parties too. Yes.
Awesome, but we saw some pinpoints, and now let's look how Maven 4 is trying to solve this. Again,
all right. So
Maven 4 is not there yet. Which is the last version, current version?
So we're currently on Apache Maven 4.0.0 Alpha 13 as of today. And Alpha 13 has 13 releases already, and then there probably, knock on wood, is going to be a small beta, and then we go production. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm already using it. Yes, sir. That is a great question. There is an amazing Maven contributor sitting here who can answer that, but I would not pressure him into answering right away.
So you don't want to go on tape?
I don't mind going on tape because my answer is I don't know.
Yes.
See, there you go. Yes, sir.
I don't think like there is any major minor version like Mango we can specify the major version, and then any acceptable minor version is like we can run that the operator in the JSON file. So we can specify like the version which is upper than that any version.
Right, so your question is, can I specify boundary ranges for my versions in Maven? And the answer is yes, there is a possibility for you to do that. It is generally not a good practice to do it. And there is a reason. It dissatisfies the principle of least astonishment, right? Think about it. You put it as any version greater than, right? Let's assume everything is working fine for the next 3 years. And then you move on because you won the lottery and now you're like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to sit at home. And some other developer comes in and they change the version such that it no longer is backward compatible. What do you do? So don't do that, please. It is possible technically, avoid doing it.
Yeah, and Spring, right? Spring 3.2
Breaks.
requires Java 17. So if you have your project using Java 11 and you're doing this, you're going to run to 3.2 and you break the whole project.
Yes, please. Thank you for letting me know.
Good thing that the one that records is the other one. So
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I did not realize that. I thought my voice was loud enough. Okay. My apologies. Anyways, so let's jump very quickly into some code action because there's no point in just showing PowerPoint presentations, right? This is a Maven talk, so let's do some Maven work. All right, so this is available on GitHub. Unfortunately, I used to have a little bar that showed the GitHub link, but the screen resolution here doesn't allow me to show that. But that being said, this code exists on GitHub, and we'll walk through this real quick. Very quick introduction to this code. This is a code where I have a multi-module structure, and the multi-module structure basically allows me to have a datetime fetcher, a greeting, and a greetings generator, 3 different modules within a Java class. So I quickly jump into the main root POM, which is located here, the POM XML file located at the root of my project. So let me just go minimize these, and I'm looking at the POM XML file at the root. And in my root, I have a project defined. Everybody who's used Maven knows that there is a project at the top. And then I have my model version number. Apache Maven 3 uses model version 4.0.0. And then I have my name of the project properties. I don't have to explain all this, but I do have modules. Right? I have 3 modules declared. The order of the modules, please be careful. It is never guaranteed to run in this exact order. Maven chooses the order for you based upon the internal dependencies. So if you were to actually put, let's say, greeting above datetime fetcher would still first get executed because it's a dependency for the greeting module. Right? So there are things like that you should be aware of. Then you have your dependency management, and you have, let's say, JUnit Jupyter version in there. You have some plugins, and I have the bad practice of not having put the compiler version, although I've been telling you all this time not to do it, because I wanted to demo it to you, right? I'm going to show you how it is improved in Apache Maven 4. So that's the first POM. Not much going on here. It's a very simple POM. There are modules. Was there a question here? Sorry. Okay. All right. So let's take a quick look at the datetime fetcher. The source code of this is immaterial, but if you do want to explore the source code, you're welcome to. We will leave you a GitHub link at the end of the session. Right. What we're looking at is the POM XML file alone. Now, the datetime fetcher is a child module, and it knows the parent in this case. So I'm actually commingling, as there was a question before. And I'm depending on version 1.0.0 of the parent. This is a pain point we've all felt, right? Where I have this version hard-coded here. I could do a $project version, but this is a hard-coded version of the same content. There's an artifact ID and there's a dependency. Not much going on here. This is easy. The second part is greeting. Rodrigo, you want to talk about greeting?
Well, which one?
The greeting module. So we have a parent. Once again, we're hard coding it.
Yep.
And what do you think about this solution out here?
All right. So here we are passing the project version, and that's our child. We need to pass that to everyone in our childs, and replace later or hard code or one of those ugly things that we need to do.
Pains. How many of us have encountered this as a problem? Come on. Come on, if all of you don't raise your hand, I would be bothered. Anyway, so we have this. And then the third POM is basically a greeting generator, where I, again, use both of my modules because I'm using greeting, and greeting uses datetime fetcher. So I have built a hierarchy of dependencies here. So it's all good. And this is how we used to do things in Apache Maven 3.x. Although 4 is not yet out, I'm using past tense for 3.x. If you really did not want to use the project version, you would hard code the project version here as well. And we've done this. And there are certain places where you can't even hard code, right? You couldn't hard code in certain parents because of certain dependencies, and it was pretty messy. I use past tense again for a very deliberate reason because I already use Apache Maven 4.0. So now I'm going to switch over to the other instance of mine where I have Apache Maven 4.x running. Okay, so here we are, same code base. And before we do that, I just wanted to very quickly run this code to show you how it looks like. So I have two shells here, and one shell is using Apache Maven 388. I don't know if that's visible. Let me increase the font a bit. Hopefully, all of you can read that it is 388. Yes? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So I'm just going to quickly go to my projects, conferences. I guess this is Maven 4 we're talking about. And I'm going to go to Maven Multi 3. And I'm just going to run, avoid using Maven clean install as much as possible. It's a humble request. Use Maven verify whenever you can. Install is just an additional build IO you don't need. So avoid using it as much as you can. When you definitely need to install this artifact into your local repository is the only time you should use install. Otherwise, stick with verify. It gives you almost the same value add where you can build out your entire project and verify that it works the way it should. It includes integration tests, by the way, so you should be covered for most part. But that being said, as always, I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm going to do the exact opposite. Okay, so this is Maven 3. Luckily, I didn't embarrass myself, and it worked.
It worked?
It worked.
Good.
So you'll notice this is a standard. A lot of you, almost all of you have seen this. Yes, this is common Maven build output. You got your Java installation, you got your dependencies being fetched, it's recompiling your sources, and it's building all the projects, and lo and behold, you have version 1.0.0 bits. Now, I'm requesting all of you to help me out. I'm a dumb programmer. How do I bump this up to version 2.0.0? Yes, sir. Maven set version. Why? Can anyone else answer me why that won't work? Yes, sir. Thank you. That's number one. That's one great answer. Any other great answers? Version Maven plugin is another answer. But what happens when you have a child that is declaring a parent of a previous version? It doesn't work. So there are so many issues with this model. Then you actually go in and physically do some manipulation, hard code values, and then you come back and then you build it. Think of the past. Let's go take a look at it now. Okay, so now we are on Maven 4. And let's very quickly start. I'm not going to go back to the README. It's all the same code. So I'm just going to directly switch to the POM files and show you a few differences here. So bear with me. I have a screen real estate problem. It looked much better on my computer. so trying to work with the screen resolution of the projector. So bear with me. Okay, here we are. You'll notice a few things, and they are currently erroring out because the IDE still doesn't like them. IntelliJ is still not very friendly with the more modern version of Maven, but it works. I assure you it works. So I have Maven, and the only difference is now I use a new schema version. It's 4.1.0. This is what you have to understand to get the new features, the new schema for Apache Maven 4. The model version is changed to 4.1.0. So please be aware of this change. And the one awesome change you will notice is now $revision, which was only available through the Flatten Maven plugin or the CI-friendly Flatten Maven plugin, is available in Apache Maven directly. You don't need a third-party plugin for this anymore, right? It works out of the box. And we'll show a demo of where this is working. And I'm sorry? So I'm going to explain that in a minute. So this is new in Apache Maven 4. What does revision do? That is the question. The revision is a replacement for a boilerplate variable for your version number that you can either pass from the root of your form, the root form, or from a command line. And it is CI friendly because your CI build tools can pass it in as an environment variable as well. So you have multiple ways of setting your version numbers in Apache Maven without using a third-party plugin. That's the first benefit of Apache Maven 4.x.
No more hard code?
No more hard code.
Good.
Okay, it only gets better from here. Okay, by the way, just FYI, if you use Java and you want to use Apache Maven 4.0, please understand it only works with Java 17 and upwards. So that is a new agreement with the Maven contributors. Martin, please keep me honest here if I'm wrong. And it does use Java 17, it only works with that, so please be aware. Yes, please.
When you say confused. Do you mean that you have to run Maven with Java 17?
That is correct. Your application should be compiled with Java 17.
So it's both. You have to run Maven with Java 17 and you can't compile something before Java 17.
That is correct. So you can use Maven release, the Maven compiler release to set it to a lower version of Java, but your actual Maven build requires Java 17. Awesome. Was there a question, sir?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so not much of a change. This code did not change much. We still have the modules here, nothing different. What was the second issue we had at Rodrigo?
With the consumer?
Yes, build versus consumer info. Okay, so let's take a quick look. I'm now going to go run this code before I show you the rest of the fun stuff. But bear with me while I go to the other window. I'm assuming this is Maven 4, and let me increase the font here as well. Okay, so as you can see up top, it does say Apache Maven 4.0.0. Is it visible? Should I increase the font further? Good, awesome. So Maven 4.0. Now I'm going to navigate to the same code that I had before, except it is under a different directory. Okay? So I have projects conference, Maven 4, and Maven monkey module 4. This is version 4 of the code. Slight changes that we'll cover as we go along. I'm going to run the Maven clean install. And there are a few things I can do here. I can actually pass -d revision equals 5.3.2. 4.2. And this works.
You need a hyphen before the capital D.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Yes, I do need a hyphen here. Sorry about that. Thank you. Great catch.
Now it works?
I didn't run it yet. Okay, this is my code. And it worked. I didn't embarrass myself, so good. Okay. While we are here, and before I solve the problem that we were originally going out, let me show you a very quick cool feature here that is awesome.
Yeah, it seems to have more things on the log now.
It now gives you a warning about which plugins you use and that they're not set values for their version numbers. You did not have this in Apache Maven 3. And this is a cool feature because now you know you're going to be more friendly to the next developer who looks at your code and you know exactly the version number is being used in which plugins. Right? And you also know which plugins you use. All this information was not available in previous versions of Maven. This is awesome. I like it.
But please don't be the developer that ignored warnings.
Yes, please don't ignore warnings because a lot of us do. We're lazy lot. So avoid ignoring warnings. Anyways, we did this, right? So we saw versions. Let me show you others as well. So each module has its own set of warnings. And exactly the plugins used by that module will get warned about. It is super awesome, super nifty, and helpful. So Apache Maven 4.0 is awesome. So now the thing that we were trying to originally show you is, if I can find my M2 folder, repository, and if I were to go to my project, I should have a Maven monkey. I have 4.3.2, that was the version I just created. If you see it works, there's a revision number, and I use the revision number without any third-party plugins to build Apache Maven version that I dictated to be used. So if I'm going to go here, actually, let me just first show you the Maven monkey form itself. You will notice that there are two forms, not one. In the past, we used to only have one form, right? And now we have two forms. The first form is your build form or your build instruction set, what you use on your local machine or in your build server to build your project. And the second one is a consumer form that goes to the repository when you deploy your artifact to whatever repository you deposit it to. There are slight differences. And it is there's still some amount of discussion going on what stays and what is removed. But for the most part, your build information, such as your source control management structure, your issue management, etc., are all not necessary and they get removed for you in the consumer form. It is awesome. The module information gets removed. That is one thing we can test right away. So let's take a quick look at our consumer form and verify that. Let's first look at the build form and then verify that it doesn't exist in the consumer form. So here we go. You see modules. This is almost the same form that you wrote. It is more of an effective form than what you have. So you have the module structure there. Now let's take a look at the consumer build form, which is the other form there. There is no module information on this form. And this is what you push out to the artifact repository. So information that is more restricted to you or your workplace is no longer a part of the consumer form, and it's super awesome to separate the two of them. Was this possible in the past? Yes. If you use the Platinum Maven plugin or the CI-friendly Platinum Maven plugin, you can still do that with Apache Maven 3.x, right? 4.0 provides it out of the box, which is super awesome. So we covered 4 features with this one of these. Let's take a quick look at the other 2 features. Remember the hard coding that we did when we wanted to, let's say, upgrade the version number and then we had a parent form? Look at the line numbers 11, 12. There is no more version number. It figures out the version number from the build. So the next time you build your next code base, that version number is automatically supplied as a parent version. You don't have to specify it anymore. So in the past, without the version, your code would not work. And you used to go through magical settings such as a $project.version or whatever in order to set it and pray that it worked. There's no need to pray anymore. It just works out of the box. The other thing that we look at is this was a daytime fetcher. We didn't have a lot of code in this. The same thing applies to when you have sibling dependencies. I don't specify the version number. So if I wanted to use the latest version of the code, I just remove the version and it works like a charm. It just works. It supplies the latest version that is got built and uses it. If you wanted to use an older version, you supply the version number. So the more, I guess, guesswork on which version is being used has been taken away with Apache Maven 4.0. Right? Yes, sir. That's right.
For the parent form, right? That parent is like the enterprise, like as an enterprise parent, right?
Right.
So we want to use that in our application and they updated the version. And if we want to stay compliant, we need to make a lot of changes, so we don't want to update the version. So
Okay. In that case, you can hardcode the version. There's nothing preventing you from adding a version to you. It is just that it's an optional field now. The question was, if there is a parent form supplied by the workplace and they upgraded the version, and you want to stay with the older version, how do I do it? And the answer is hardcode the version there, and it's totally acceptable.
And if it was set in a bomb, if a version was set in a bomb, then I guess this is the one that's going to be chosen.
Right, so there is a dependency conflict resolution still stays the same in Apache Maven 4. And if you're interested, I can share with you a deck where we go through an entire dependency conflict resolution.
Okay.
So the question was, what happens if there are versions set in multiple places, such as in a BOM file and in, say, a dependency management section elsewhere? Which one takes precedence? And the answer is, the conflict resolution stays exactly as it was in 3.x. Nothing has changed. That part is consistent with Maven. It always works exactly the same way. Okay, awesome. So that is the second thing we saw, is that when you have a child dependency, those dependency vectors, those dependencies don't need versions as well. So I think we covered all 5 use cases where our parent form solutions exist, where we can either set a value ourselves or completely remove the version and allow Maven to supply the latest built version for us, which is awesome in my humble opinion. And I've used it several times already. I run Apache Maven 4 on my local, and I keep it up to date. Right? So that's something you can try out, experiment, and also, I guess, spread more awareness so that it's still in alpha stage and you want it out there. So let's spread that message. With that, I just want to do one more time. Sorry, there's a question.
Yeah, quick question. If when you say it uses the latest version, does it check it local repository for the latest version, or does it go all the way up to the internet to check?
It builds first. This is your dependency. So it builds the code that you're looking for with the current version and uses that. So let's assume you are upgrading a dependency, or you're just building this one module. it will build all the dependency modules and use that version in your code. So it will stay consistent.
No, I'm trying to ask a question. If between the time that you built it just a few minutes ago, and right now JUnit upgrade to 5.4,
Right.
would it pick up? When would it pick up the 5.4? Next build or the next time you get
It wouldn't unless you change on the parents. It wouldn't, because that version that's here, we're not showing the version, but that version it's being picked from the parent. So unless you change on the parents, nothing gonna change, right? So you keep the same in the parents. Doesn't matter how many new releases you have, you're still gonna have the same version.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned like the bill of materials is still a pom.xml, which is kind of confusing, right? So has it been changed or fixed?
That's a great question. That's the last topic I'm going to cover. So with Maven 4.x, there is a new packaging that has been introduced, and it's called BOM. We've heard of BOM packaging, we've heard of jar packaging, EJB, WAR, etc. And now we have a BOM packaging. It doesn't do much except for the fact that it is a BOM and it's very customized, and people, as soon as they look at it, know that it's a BOM packaging. And there are certain sections which you will clearly stand out and share with others. So this helps with. So the biggest problem is with POM toxicity. That's how it goes. Right? POM toxicity essentially means where you have you declare a POM, but some other developer did not know that its purpose and intent was a POM, and they start adding material that is not a POM. You've seen this. A lot of us have seen this. With this, sort of eliminate that problem. All right, awesome. So I think we covered all the features. So Rodrigo, may I request you to wrap this up?
Perfect.
That you take over.
All right, so we're just seeing here a few differences, some benefits that Apache Maven 4 is bringing us. So again, just review. Version support, now it's awesome. We have implicit version for dependencies for the sibling modules. We have separate POM files for the build and the consumer info. So all the information that's not needed for the consumer, for the final POM, they're removed. Again, this is still being discussed. That's not final. How many of those things are going to be removed, like the plugins management, or the other things.
While we were doing this for the demo, we noticed that certain things that we expected to be gone are still showing up. So it's still like a research, and we found some information, but it's not the latest.
Yep. So introduce the BOM packaging option, and also we have the warnings now for when the plugin versions are not declared.
So with that, I think you conclude there's a lot more material on this slide there. We're happy to share this, and we'll provide the GitHub link in case you're interested. But before we wrap this up, I just want to know Apache Maven 4 is
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions, please? Yes, Henry.
One thing in Maven 3, you already have the revision thing. You cannot remove the parent, but you can already put a property and add it also your .npm directory. So that fixes a little of that, but it's not as great. The other thing we haven't talked about, I think Maven 4 is a bit better at knowing that it doesn't need to do things like compile because it should be fine.
Right, so build
Stages.
caching has been improved. So this was more of a, I guess, what we see as POM builders rather than build makers. So that's what it is. But you're absolutely right. Build speeds have been increased with Apache Maven 4. I visually noticed it. And I think when we ran the code, it ran faster. Let's take a quick look. So let us see how much time this took. I don't want to look at the time it took because it looks like Maven 4 took longer than Maven 3.
Do it again, like without the key.
Oh, okay. Let me remove the version number and see if that helps.
Oh, remove the key. Don't key.
No, please, you don't want to.
Maven verify.
Jean, you had a question in the meantime. If you...
He asked my question in the form of a statement.
Okay.
Yes, Rodrigo. I have another question. It's about the bond packaging. Can you tell us? I mean, I guess I didn't understand when Chandra explained what was going on with this new packaging. What is it for? I mean, You know what confuses me is that, right? I mean, bomb, bill of materials are pretty significant now with our tools like Sift, Sneak, and whatever. Because this is basically a list of stuff. There are different formats, cyclone digs and whatever. I guess this is not what you were talking about. You were talking about another kind of bomb. Was it Maven bomb, and what is this packaging about? I'm sorry, it's a long question. I don't know if that makes sense.
So I guess the question is there a special kind of packaging for the Maven bomb?
Yeah, that's what you said, right? I mean,
Right. So when you let's quickly take a look at this. So in Apache Maven, the standard default when you create a new form and don't specify anything, it builds a jar for you.
Yes.
Yes. And it builds a jar because the default that is puts in the effective form is this.
Yes.
Right. And this was awesome. Now, when you create a bomb file on your own, in the past, you would type this as bomb. Not bomb, not bill of materials, but project object model. And then you would write your bill of materials that way. But it brought in scope creep and form toxicity because you could write anything in there, not just bill of materials content. Right? Your intention was good, and then the next developer who came in did not realize that this was a bill of materials form. They just see form, so they had more form content. Right? And that is possible. With Maven 4, it introduces bomb. That is the thing.
So bomb will not allow you to put bomb stuff.
I don't believe that is true yet. It may be a future thing to do, but for now, a bomb basically is at least a visual identifier to the next developer. Hey, this is a bill of materials packaging. Don't put other form content in it. So step one is to at least create a packaging, right? And then you can enhance it further in the next portions.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah.
Is there any way, either in Maven 3 or Maven 4, to get Maven to generate and use a lock file?
Generate a new.
Generate and use a lock file.
A lock file. That is interesting. I mean, I don't see why not. You can create it and we end up using it in config, but I don't understand the purpose. What are you trying to achieve? The question is it possible for Maven to use a lock file? I guess to prevent duplicate builds, or what is the
to increase reproducibility.
Okay, so there are some best practices around reproducibility. The question is it possible for Maven to lock down so that you can improve reproducibility? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. The answer is, number one, form hygiene is very important. So lock down your version numbers in your actual form and ensure all your plugins are version and control. Set the configurations correctly and follow the lifestyles. Lifestyles execute in a certain order, right? The order of execution of lifecycles is important. So configure your plugins accordingly. If you have one or more plugins that execute against the same lifecycle phase, know that there will always be ambiguity in the order, right? So be aware of those things, and that form hygiene has to lock. There is no specific locking per se outside of the form hygiene that would prevent, that would cause you reproducibility issues.
You do not need it. Because if you're in Node, it will put ranges of transitive dependencies, so you never know what you're getting. In Maven, it doesn't happen. You have no range. You have exactly what are the dependencies of everything. So you know exactly how it bumps. So the rules are really strict, so you get exactly the same thing all the time.
It is very
consistent.
Unless you don't use snapshots, that's not.
Don't avoid using snapshots. Thank you. Yes.
Good.
Unless your transitive dependencies use ranges.
Declare your transitive dependencies in that case, if you're that one.
That's right.
It wouldn't hurt. I mean, it's absolutely okay to be paranoid when you come to a grid structure because a lot depends on it. I've seen issues in the past where a rogue project was a transitive dependency or something you did, and it wreaked havoc. Right? It's possible because no tenants in it, they're not fixing it, not so distant time ago. So Maintain form hygiene, that is the best locking mechanism you will get.
The other use case I have for it is wanting to be able to pre-fetch all the dependencies so I can run an offline build.
That's right. So a lot of corporations provide what is called the local mirror cache of Maven Central, and they use firewalls, also like the Devnexus firewall or Apache firewall, to prevent and lock down certain versions. Right? And the Rodrigo incident happened 2 years ago. A lot of those corporations actually locked down the version, did not allow access from the internet, and fixed the Log4j version on the central repository within the premises of the company. Right? And that's another effective solution to use. Set up good firewalls, set up on-demand cache strategies for Apache within local repositories, and it works out like a charm. Yes, please.
Can you show us why using Maven Verify is the preferred choice than Maven Clean Install?
Yeah, so I don't even have to show you, I can just talk to you. That's just like that. So when you run the Maven Clean Install, what are the additional things that are happening? Your artifact gets built, and it is physically copied over into your .m2 repository structure.
So in your target folder, you generate the jar, and then it copies to the M2 repository.
When you use Maven Verify, that dot file is just in your target directory. It's not going anywhere. There's no further copy. It reduces the file IO operation, saves some of the computers memory, and so on and so forth. So it's just that is empty factors. There's no big difference. Yes, sir.
You said there's no timeline for Maven 4, but it seems to be in internal development. Is there some kind of definition what Maven 4 should be?
Well, there is definitely a very good definition of Maven 4, of what the visual impact of Maven 4 is. It is going through several iterations because Maven, if you've all noticed, is an extremely stable trial. You've never been surprised by Maven, right? It has always consistently delivered. I think they're trying to keep the promise. I mean, this time it is taking longer than you want, which we can try to sort of manage a little bit every now and then by asking about it. But I always trust that we will come up with stable versions. So that's probably what I'm saying about that.
What do you days, weeks, months?
Martin, maybe you can help me with this answer. Are we looking at days, weeks, or months for Maven 4.0?
In this regard, I know just as much as you. And you could say, in a way, we followed the Debian approach. We release it when it's ready. And what exactly means ready, because that is, I think, is what Edwin was asking. Even that is kind of up for debate internally in the Maven community. So that is basically why it's so hard to say days, weeks, or months. If it were up to me alone, this way, it is not. It was yesterday. But it is not up to me alone. There's many folks working on Apache Maven, and we all have to agree, yes, this is Maven 4. This is what we want to release into the world.
It feels safe to say it isn't days because your answer wasn't, ooh, it might be imminent.
Say again?
It seems safe to assume it's not days because your answer wasn't, ooh, it's imminent.
Well, that is true.
Yeah, we can cross out days. That's
Days is cross out. That's true. Because there's still an app, right?
If only for the fact that actually releasing it takes a couple of days for the internal voting that everybody agrees, yes, this is Maven 4. There's a formal process for that, dictated by the Apache Software Foundation, that says you have to have a vote. It needs to be open for 72 hours. So,
there is that. Yes.
There
So,
we have.
minimum of 72 hours, I can show you.
Did I understand correctly? The Maven source code is built using Java 17, but you could build a Java 8 project with a binary produced.
That is correct, yes. Yes.
Okay, can you repeat what you said?
So the question is, Maven itself is coded with Java 17. So when you run a build, you run it with Java 17, except you can produce a binary for the lower Java version.
you always can.
Do I have to have Java 17 installed on my local machine if I download the binary?
you will not be able to execute it. If you're just downloading it for the sake of downloading, it works, but if you want to execute, you will need Java 17.
That's correct.
Or higher.
Or higher. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
My money's on a year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go.
Year.
What's today? 10. So yeah.
But you can start using Apache Maven 4.0 alpha releases. They are pretty stable. It's not, it's unsurprising. This is Apache Maven. It's always solved. So it works. You've seen it. I wouldn't demo it otherwise. That's me.
Actually, yeah, I forgot to ask, but maybe you already said, you already explained. For plugin developers, do they need to do something? I mean, if I don't know, if I am working on the, let's say the Apache Wagon plugin or whatever, do they need to be upgraded to be compatible with Maven 4? Or are they going to work without any changes?
So, yes.
Good question.
If you're doing Java 17, even the plugins have to be upgraded to use Java 17.
Yep.
Right? So if they use code that is
But apart from that, the phases, lifecycle, and blah, blah, I mean, they're all the same?
they should remain fairly the same. I mean, it doesn't change much. There is one new life cycle. Might you add something there?
If I may, I would like to add that some of the internal APIs have changed. And you can, of course, upgrade your plugins into new APIs, but that will make them incompatible with Maven 3. But in the good tradition that we have, we provide compatibility layers. But you will have to add that to your class path of your plugin.
So I'll just repeat that for the sake of Mike.
On that compatibility.
I can repeat that, or Martin, if you don't mind stepping over and saying that?
Sorry?
If you don't mind stepping over and saying that, or I can repeat it quick.
Please, it's your talk, not mine.
So there are certain APIs that are, I guess, changed in the internals of Maven, and those changes will probably require other plugins to sort of compile or touch upon, and that's something to be aware of.
But just, Mark, this is your name?
What?
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to piggyback on what you just said. You said that if I have a plugin that was working with Maven, so I compile it now with Java 17. Then you say that if I want to use it using Maven 4, I will also need to drop in Maven class path the compatibility layer for the new internal APIs. Is it what you said?
No, that's not what or at least that's not what I meant to say.
Okay. So if you don't mind, can we take this outside?
Yeah.
I just wanted to just say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have any further questions, please